people are being greatly affected by quarantine. Talk a little bit about that, if you will.
I mean, that's one of the very strange things about watching all this happen is that if you watch CNN or the mainstream media, they'll say, well, we have to follow the science. And what they mean by that is we have to do what Tony Fauci and Bill Gates tell us to do because they're the people who understand, the progression of this disease. And assuming that that's true, and it's an assumption. Tony Fauci is a virologist. He may be able to predict the mortalities from COVID given certain scenarios, so different lockdown scenarios. One thing that he is absolutely incompetent to predict is how many people are going to die from the quarantine. And there's really good science on that. In fact, there's science going back to the 1980s that say that every 1 point of additional unemployment in the United States of America causes 37,000 deaths. 9,000 deaths of them are heart attacks. There's about 900 that are suicides, and on and on. In addition to that, there's 4,000 additional imprisonments and 3,300 additional admissions to mental institutions. And that's just from unemployment. And that's, an older study when our population was, so it would be much larger today. So just taking that one assumption that you get 37,000 deaths, if we add 30 unemployment points, which is what they're talking about, that is about 1.1 million deaths from unemployment. Well, the worst models from Fauci are that we'll kill about 100,000, 150,000 from COVID if we do nothing. And so, what the risk assessment is not happening. And not only that, but the Johns Hopkins and the Imperial College of London just did a study that came out yesterday. It showed if we go for 3 months with the quarantine, that's going to be an additional 6.3 million people who get tuberculosis and 1.5 million deaths. We have disruptions to the food chain, to our supply chain for food, for medicines. That is going to cause deaths. We have hundreds of thousands of Americans who are deferring surgery, medical treatment for
cancer treatments,
cancers, for hypertension, for diabetes, et cetera, and those are going to cause deaths. Nobody is doing the risk assessment. How many deaths is the quarantine going to cause? Nobody is talking about that at all.
And let's discuss the deaths
why?
from COVID itself. I mean, I think in comparison, right, those are all really important figures. But when we look at this, we know that the numbers are being bloated. Mark my words, you will hear Tony Fauci and Deborah Birx somewhere in the future say, well, they weren't all COVID-19 deaths. There were other comorbid issues, just like we heard from Italy and China, everywhere else. Why are they going to say that? Because we now have the highest death rate in the world, which means Deborah Birx and Tony Fauci are absolutely awful at their jobs. And so how are they going to explain why in America we were the last ones to get this? We knew it was the elderly, 65 and older with other comorbidities. We watched in Italy. Why are we having the highest death rates? Well, we're not. We're bloating those numbers because those people would have died of heart disease. They would have died of COPD. In Italy, and Deborah Birx said, we mirror Italy. Italy came to the determination that 88% of the deaths from COVID-19 were not caused by COVID-19, but because of their other issues. So when we look at that, we're not even at a death rate of flu, which is 0.1%. If we strip those back and say 12% of these deaths are really the COVID deaths, you're going to reduce that 80,000 down to 10, 15,000 deaths and realize that this is one of the most trivial illnesses we've ever dealt with. And we have brought all of this risk of quarantine upon ourselves because Bill Gates and these people had an agenda outside of taking care of us.
Not to mention, people staying at home lowers their immune system. The over-sanitation hurts the immune system. And even the mask, doctor came out saying...
And telling people they can't go to the beach.
Yeah.
In the sun.
We know that vitamin D is...
They're telling you we've got to shut this down, even though it really is only a flu. They're using it to terrify us, lock us down. Is this the future we want, right? That's all we have to ask ourselves. This is what that little group, the conspiracy group, Gates, and Fauci, this is the world they want. Is this the world that we want? We've got to step up now and say, no, I'm not worried about getting an infection. When I think about growing up with the Bible, my father was a minister, and I think about about the Garden of Eden. God says, you know, really, I've given you everything perfect. You can have everything here. Just don't eat of the knowledge of the tree of good and evil. And now that I look at this, what it's really saying, right, is never be so arrogant that you think you can understand the human immune system the way God does, that you understand the virus and the bacteria. By the way, we have millions of viruses and bacteria in us, on us as we speak. That beautiful balance that was created by God, people like Tony Fauci, people like Bill Gates thinks that they can interject, that they can go after, you know, a vaccine for one of these viruses out of the billions that exist on this planet and somehow make us healthier, make us better than God made us. That really is the ultimate arrogance. And I guess if you want to call that satanic, it is satanic to think that you can do better than God, at least if you grew up with the Bible and looked at it the way I was raised to. So all of these numbers, they sort of add to that. Doesn't mean there's a conspiracy to these things weigh in. It doesn't matter. What we're seeing is they're telling you what they're going to do. They're going to interfere with nature. They're going to interfere with your immune system in a way that could be so catastrophic. Here's what I will say. We have lived this long on this planet as human beings. There's never been a virus or a bacteria that wiped us off of the planet. We are still here before there was ever doctors, before there was ever vaccines. But a failure, a mix-up with this vaccine, with the issue we saw in ferrets, could actually wipe this species off the planet. We should take that very, very seriously.